I booked the house on Airbnb almost without thinking. When you're going through a bad time, you don't need a clear reason to leave where you live. I just knew I wanted a quiet place. No people, no honking cars, no social questions. The house showed up in the listing. Cabin on the hill, 30 minutes from town, surrounded by pine trees. The photo was blurry, but I liked it. There was something real about the oldness. No lighting, no over-ornamentation. Just a house standing alone among the trees, slanted roof, small windows. I arrived on a Friday afternoon. A drizzle blurred the road. The car climbed a small hill, and as the wheels slid gently on the wet ground, I felt like I was entering a different place, isolated from the rest of the world. The wooden house appeared around the last corner, half hidden in fog. Ash-gray walls, low windows, rusted tin roof. Something made me hesitate. Not scared, just feeling wrong. But when I opened the door, everything was fine. Clean, tidy, smelling of dry pine and freshly oiled boards. There was a printed note on the kitchen table. "Welcome to Hillview Cabin. Make yourself at home. My contact number is below if there's a problem. Text me instead of calling. Emily." I put my suitcase away, checked my cell phone signal weak, almost gone. I opened my laptop, wrote a few lines, then went out onto the porch. It was drizzling. The hill sloped west, with a small light in the distance, maybe the gas station at the bottom. I heard the wind whistling through the distant antenna, then the sound of something falling somewhere behind the house. I turned around, saw nothing. The next morning, I made coffee, opened the window. The rain had stopped. The mist was thin as smoke. There was a hand-shaped blur on the glass, small, like a child's hand. I touched it. It was cold. I wiped it off and didn't think about it anymore. At noon, I went to the back to check the water pipes. Under the floor was a small cellar, covered with a wooden lid and lined with corrugated iron. I tried to pry it open. It was dark, smelled damp, and there was an iron pipe running deep into the ground. I shined my flashlight, saw a rusty can and what looked like a rag on the end of the pipe. I closed the lid. That evening, I tried to contact Emily about the water pipe. No answer. I sent a message, no response. I opened the Airbnb app again. Her account was no longer active. The second night, the wind picked up. I was sitting at my desk when I heard something sliding across the roof. Not fast, but very slow, like someone crawling. I turned off the light and went out onto the porch. The wind blew cold. I saw nothing, only the black shadows of the forest. When I returned, I noticed the bedroom window was slightly open, though I was sure it was locked. I pulled the curtains, trying to sleep, but around 3 a.m., I heard someone knocking 3 times on the wall, right above my bed. Not hard, but soft, almost, as if checking to see if I could hear. I held my breath and listened. 5 minutes passed. 3 more, slower, closer. I turned on the light. The house was quiet, except for the wind chimes on the porch spinning. I walked around, no sign of anyone coming in. But when I returned to bed, I saw a small piece of scrap on the blanket, dark gray, wet fabric. The next morning, I went to the kitchen. There was a light mud stain on the floor in the shape of half a foot. Not completely, just from the toe to the middle of the sole. I looked down at my shoes, dry. I looked back at the door. Drops of water were running in a line, from the handle to the floor. I felt a strange feeling rise in my heart. Not fear, but the thought that someone has been here with me all this time. At noon, I drove into town. I stopped at the grocery store, asked the store owner about the house on Hillview. He looked at me for a long time, then said, "That house? Emily used to rent it, but she moved out last year. It's been empty for months. Who would dare live there? I asked, why wouldn't they? He shrugged. They say she rented it to a group of students, and then something happened. I don't know. I just know the police were there, but no one said anything more. I returned when it was dark. I locked the door, turned off the lights, and left only one person sleeping. I sat on a chair, listening. Everything was quiet, until it was almost midnight. I heard something rattling in the kitchen cupboard. I stood up, grabbed my flashlight. The cupboard door shook slightly, then stopped. I opened it. There were only a few plates, a box of salt, and a small glass filled with water. I put the glass on the table, my hands shaking. The water inside was still warm. I didn't sleep anymore. Every time the wind changed direction, I heard the wooden floorboards creaking in a different place. It was like someone was walking slowly around me, going in circles. Around 4 a.m., I heard the cellar door at the back of the house open. Not loudly, just the sound of old hinges creaking, then silence. I didn't dare go out. I just sat there, in silence, until the sun came up. When the first light came in, I opened the door and stepped out. The cellar door was wide open, the wind blowing the corrugated iron sheeting away. There was no more metal pipe down there, just a big, wet, empty space, like someone had just dug it up. I left that day. I didn't get my deposit back. I just wanted to get off the hill. When I got onto the main road, my phone signal came back. I got a text message at 3:12 a.m. from Emily. The only message: thanks for cleaning up for me. They hate it when someone is on top of them. I didn't answer. I blocked the number, deleted my Airbnb account, and threw away my phone a week later. But sometimes at night, I could still hear the rain pounding on the tin roof. I rented the apartment on Airbnb last September, when my company sent me to Savannah for 2 weeks. I don't like hotels, so I chose a place that seemed more down to earth. The listing read, old apartment on the second floor, in a house built in 1889. Near the river, balcony overlooking the street. The pictures looked old but warm, dark wood floors, high windows, thin white curtains. I liked the quietness. The owner, Adele, texted me before I arrived. The house is a little damp, don't worry, that's normal in Savannah. Watch the stairs, they creak when it rains. Her text message voice was polite, almost old. I didn't ask many questions. I arrived in the afternoon, when it was still a bit hot. The street was cobblestone, narrow, lined with old houses with wrought iron balconies. The apartment I rented was on the second floor of the corner house. The smell of damp and old wood mixed together, something that reminded me of a museum. I opened the door, the hinges creaked slightly. The space was darker than I expected. There was only a ceiling fan spinning slowly, emitting a whistling sound. The apartment was not large. A living room connected to the kitchen, a small bedroom, and a window that opened onto the balcony. On the wall was a faded painting of a Savannah River landscape. Everything was quiet, a bit still for too long. I turned on the light, the sound of the switch ringing dryly. There was no TV in the house, just an old radio on the shelf, plugged in. I tried it. There was no signal, just a long static sound. I turned it off. The first night, I sat on the balcony listening to the rain. The city below still had car lights. The sound of rain on the tin roof mixed with the slow sound of the ceiling fan inside the house. Everything was very peaceful, until I heard light footsteps on the wooden floor downstairs. I thought the owner was downstairs, so I didn't pay attention. But a few minutes later, Footsteps came up the stairs. I looked out the door, no one, just the creaking of wood, one rung at a time, then stopped in front of my apartment. I waited. No knock, just silence. Then the footsteps came back down, slowly. The next morning, I texted Adele, asking if she lived downstairs. She replied, "No, I'm in another state. The apartment downstairs has been empty since May. Maybe the neighbors went by mistake." I didn't ask anymore. I worked all day that day, coming home late. When I opened the door, I noticed the window shades were closed, which I'd left open that morning. On the table, the old radio was on by itself, even though the switch was off. From the speaker came a steady hum, interspersed with broken voices, like static. A male voice, very low, said something that sounded like, "Don't go downstairs." I stood still, then unplugged. The room was silent. I had trouble sleeping. At about 2 a.m., I heard a light knock on the wall, exactly 3 times. I turned on the light, walked around, no one. The walls were thin, but the room below was empty, so who was knocking? I tried not to think. I slept, but I had a distinct feeling that someone was standing in the hallway. The third day, when I returned from work, I found a note stuck under my door. It was old, yellowed, and written in ink. "If you hear footsteps at night, don't open the door. They don't like to be seen." Unsigned. I read it over and over, then crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. It rained that night. Savannah rain was thick and cold, and it sounded like someone was tapping repeatedly on the glass door. I was about to go to sleep when I heard a small laugh from the hallway. A very soft, muffled laugh, like someone trying to hold back a laugh in their throat. I turned off the light and stood behind the door, my heart pounding. The laughter stopped, replaced by whispers, more than one person, speaking indistinctly, as if from a distance. Then footsteps, walking down the corridor. I looked through the crack of the door. A figure passed by, tall, thin, with slanted shoulders. I didn't dare breathe. About 10 minutes later, everything was quiet. But when I opened the window to breathe, I saw someone's shadow standing on the opposite wall, watching, just downstairs. When I blinked, the shadow disappeared. The next morning I asked the building caretaker. He was an old man of about 70, wearing a cloth cap, with a hoarse voice. When I said I heard voices at night, he was silent for a moment, then said, "The downstairs apartment is not rented. But I tell you the truth, if you live here, don't go downstairs when it rains. In the old days, the water flooded, people drowned right there. The damp smell in the walls comes from that time." I asked when that time was. He replied, "About 40 years ago." That night, I didn't sleep. I heard the sound of water dripping from the ceiling. Regularly, I set up a bucket to catch it. The sound of the water gradually turned to a clattering sound, as if someone had thrown a pebble from above. I looked up at the ceiling and saw a black dot, water dripping through. But what was dripping wasn't water, but a long, wet strand of hair. I left early the next morning, telling Airbnb that there was a problem with the house. They promised a refund. I didn't return. But before I got in the taxi, I took one last look at the house. In the window upstairs, the apartment I'd rented, someone was standing. I rented the house on Airbnb in early winter 2021. I wanted to get out of the city for a few days, find a quiet place to work. The house on Lake Michigan popped up in the listings, a 2-story wooden house. Large windows overlooking the water, a yard covered in dead leaves. The short description: no neighbors nearby, private road, fireplace. The photo was taken in the morning, the lake flat. reflecting the gray-blue sky. I stared at it for a while, then booked it. I never thought I would remember those photos, every detail, because I dreamed about them every night afterward. I arrived in the afternoon. The road to the house wound through a clearing in the woods. It had just snowed lightly, the ground damp and silent. When I got out of the car, a cold wind blew from the lake, carrying the metallic smell of water and wet earth. I heard the crack of dry twigs in the distance, but no one was in sight. The house was warm, clean, and smelled a little old. Dark wooden floors, large glass doors overlooking the lake. The wind rippled the water, reflecting a cold white light. There was a printed note on the table, written in default font, without a signature. "Thank you for choosing our house. If you see the patio light on at night, don't worry. The sensor is a bit faulty. Manager." I put down my suitcase, took off my jacket, checked the internet weak, but there. I opened my laptop, sat by the glass door. The afternoon light shone obliquely. The lake looked like a thin layer of ice. There was no sound other than the wind. The first night was peaceful, until I woke up in the middle of the night to a sound outside. Not the sound of wind, but a light splash, as if someone was walking in the lake. I looked at the clock, 2:41 a.m. I pulled the curtains, only to see the black water, reflecting a little light from the porch light. I told myself it was waves crashing on the shore, but when I listened closely, the sound had a rhythm: step, stop, step, stop. The next morning, I went to the lake. The snow was shallow, and there were faint footprints that ran from the water's edge to the lawn, then disappeared right under the porch. The prints were small, but clearly bare feet. I stood there for a long time, then brushed the snow off to cover them. At noon, I moved things into the kitchen and found a few things in the refrigerator: milk, bread, and a bottle of clear water without a label. I guessed it was from a previous customer. When I opened the lid, it smelled a bit fishy, so I threw it away. In the lower drawer, there was a plastic bag containing a faded photo taken in the same house, from the corner of the yard. In the photo was a woman with long hair, her back to the camera, standing by the glass door, looking out at the lake. I turned it over. It was blank. I put the photo back in the drawer and closed it. In the afternoon, the clouds were low, and the light was silvery gray. I worked until dark. Around 8 o'clock, I heard the wind chimes on the porch, which I hadn't seen when I arrived. I went to check. There was a bell, hanging right on the door frame, the cold metal gleaming, swinging gently in the wind. The cord was new, no dust. I felt a chill run down my spine. I went back in and locked the door. That night, the wind was strong, and the snow was starting to thicken. As I dozed off, the porch light came on. I remembered the words in the note, but I kept my eyes open and looked out the window. The yellow light reflected off the white surface of the lake. In the light, I saw a figure standing at the edge of the water, facing me. I turned on the light, closed the curtains, but my heart was still pounding. I waited, heard nothing more. In the morning, when I stepped out onto the porch, the snow was still there. No footprints, no trace. The second day, I decided to leave early. I texted Airbnb to say that the house had a faulty light sensor and that there were strangers in the area. They didn't respond. At noon, I packed up. When I packed my laptop, I noticed a small piece of paper tucked under the keyboard. The paper was yellowed, the handwriting was scribbled. "Did you see her?" Nothing else. My throat felt dry. I turned around the house one last time. No one. But in the corner of the floor, right by the bedroom door, there was a round water stain, as if someone had just put down a cup. I bent down. Cold, metallic smell. I was going to drive away, but the snow was getting thicker. The road was slippery downhill. I was afraid of getting lost in the woods. I decided to stay another night. Around 10 p.m., the lights went out. I turned on my flashlight. The space was absolutely silent. No wind, no sound of water. I could hear my heart beating, and in that moment, from the yard outside, I heard 2 knocks on the glass door. I stood still. The sound echoed again after a few seconds, regular. I shined the light out the door, only snow, no one. I pulled the curtains, turned away. But a few minutes later, the porch light came on. A yellow light came through the curtains. I glanced. There, the silhouette of the woman in the photo was standing right at the edge of the lake. Her back turned, her long black hair flying lightly. I didn't open the door. I didn't move. All night, I heard the wind hitting the glass, and occasionally, a very soft knock, as if someone was gently tapping the glass with their fingertips, patiently, regularly. When the sun rose, pale light streamed into the room. I was exhausted. I opened the curtains. The porch light was still on. The wind chimes were still. I went outside. The snow was